people in the scriptures, Moses, Jeremiah, Jonah, to name but a few, were so overwhelmed with the stresses and struggles of life that they just wanted to give up. And they went even further than that. They wanted to die. They actually asked God, allow me to die. I've had enough. I want to give up on life itself. And another Bible personality who wanted to give up and to die was the prophet Elijah. Now there is no doubt that Elijah was a heroic figure. There is no question that Elijah was a man of humility. He was heroic, he was humble, but he was also human. James says that Elijah was a man of like passions as we are. Yes, he was heroic, he was humble, but he was also human. And nowhere do we see that humanity better displayed than in 1 Kings chapter 19. Because in that chapter we have an incredible contrast between Elijah and in the previous chapter. An amazing contrast. He is changed from a fearless fighter to a frightened fugitive. And the fact that we have this story is a testimony to the inspiration and the integrity of Scripture. You see, the various biblical writers do not hide the weaknesses or ignore the frailties or gloss over the defects of character of the various Bible personalities. They give us the full picture. One of the most controversial figures in British history, he ranks as one of the most colourful, is the 17th century soldier and politician Oliver Cromwell. He actually made a tremendous contribution to the development of parliamentary democracy in Britain, so much so that his statue is outside the House of Parliament in Westminster in London. Now, the story is told that an artist was commissioned to paint a portrait of Oliver Cromwell. Now, apparently Cromwell was afflicted with warts on his face. And so the artist, wanting to do Cromwell a favour, painted him without these facial blemishes. When Cromwell saw the finished work, he just dismissed it out of hand. Away with it! I am not going to give you a farthing for this. If you're going to paint me, you have got to paint me warts and all. And that's where we get the expression, warts and all. And that's what you get in the Bible. You get the various personalities in the Bible, warts and all. And so this morning I want to look at what one person has described as the Elijah decision. The Elijah decision is when you want to give up on all that is important in life. When you want to give up on your purpose in life. When you want to give up on the goals that you've been aiming for. When you want to give up on all those things that you've been working hard for. The Elijah decision. The Elijah decision is to give up on faith. It's to give up on God. It's to give up on family and friends. It is to give up on life itself. I mean, we're talking about something really serious here. And this morning I want to look at those stresses which led Elijah to this point. And then, praise God, look at God's grace and how it responded to that particular crisis in Elijah's ministry. I mean, we have an amazing and dramatic turnaround in Elijah's outlook and fortunes between these two chapters, 1 Kings 18, 1 Kings 19. One moment, Elijah was running in triumph before the chariot of Ahab. The next moment, he is running frantically to save his life. One moment, he is standing loyal and courageous and true before the 450 prophets of Baal. And the next moment, he is running for his life from the anger of just one woman. Now, she wasn't a very formidable woman, but she was just one woman. One moment, he was praying for an end of the drought. The next moment, he's praying for the end of his life. One moment, he's walking on the mountaintop of victory. The next moment, he is wallowing in the valley of despair. And you have to ask the question, what on earth happened? Why this dramatic, startling change? Now, on the surface, it appeared very sudden. But in actual fact, it was very gradual. That wouldn't have appeared to onlookers, least of all to Elijah himself. And there were a number of factors that led Elijah into this descent into the pit of despair. The first factor was that Elijah failed to deal with success. He failed to deal with the aftermath of success. I remember one of my lectures at Bible College preaching a sermon entitled After Great Moments. And in that sermon he emphasized the fact that we are at our most vulnerable and Satan is at his most dangerous in the aftermath of great moments. Moments of achievement, moments of success. Because you see, when things are going well, when we're experiencing success, there is the danger of starting to trust more in ourselves and less in God. We can become overconfident. And one of the perils of the aftermath of success is overconfidence. Another is the reality of anticlimax. You see, after a great moment, after a wonderful experience, there's always a letdown. Now, you've probably experienced this in your walk with God. You know, perhaps you've gone to a great camp meeting. Maybe it's been a wonderful week of prayer. Maybe it's been a particularly inspiring worship service. And you have come away enthused and excited and thrilled about your walk with God. And then Monday morning comes. And you go to school or you go to work and you get embroiled in the routine of life. And you feel a letdown. And you wonder what's happening. Why do I feel this way? And the fact is that after every physical high, after every emotional or spiritual high, there is a letdown. There's an anticlimax. George Spurgeon was arguably the greatest preacher in the English-speaking world in the 19th century. He's often referred to as the Prince of Preachers. But he fought a lifelong battle against discouragement, against depression. And on one occasion he talked about this with his students. And this is what he had to say. When at last a long-cherished desire is fulfilled, when God has been glorified greatly by our means and a great triumph achieved, then we are apt to faint. It might be imagined that amid special favours our soul would soar to heights of ecstasy and rejoice with joy unspeakable, but it is generally the reverse. Excess of joy or excitement must be paid for by subsequent depressions. You see, the fact of the matter is that you and I cannot live on a high all the time. We just can't. It's impossible physically, it's impossible emotionally, it's impossible spiritually. We cannot live on a high all the time. Yes, it's lovely to be on the mountaintop, but we've got to come down into the valley. And when we do, there's going to be a sense of letdown. But if we're aware of that, if we're aware of the emotions that accompany that, then we can be protected against the sort of response that Elijah had. You see, Elijah had failed to recognize the emotions, the sense of letdown that often accompanies the aftermath of success. There was another factor in his descent into despair. It was a very simple one. He was tired. He was tired. He was very tired. 1 Kings chapter 19 and verse 5. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. The next verse, verse 6, he ate and drank and then lay down again. Elijah was tired. He was physically exhausted. He was emotionally spent. He was tired. Now you have to realize that for the last few years of his ministry, he had been living life on the edge. He had been public enemy number one. He had been the target of a national manhunt organized by King Ahab. Elijah had waged a one-man battle against the evils of Baal worship. And that had climaxed with a spectacular showdown against the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. And so those years of pressure, those years of struggle took their toll. Elijah was tired. The ancient Greeks had this saying, you will break the bow if you always keep it bent. In other words, if you and I are living with constant stress and relentless pressure, we will ultimately come to a breaking point. And all of us have a breaking point. For some, it may be sooner rather than later, but we all have a breaking point. And this was Elijah's breaking point. He was tired. He couldn't cope anymore. And so when he heard about Jezebel's reaction, that was it. And tiredness makes us less resilient. Things that we can easily deal with when we're fresh become major obstacles when we're tired. You know, our church, along with other communities, values what is known as the Protestant work ethic. And it's a wonderful ethic. It gives purpose and meaning to life. It gives drive and direction to our lives. It aims for excellence, making a difference in life, in society. But life is more than work. You see, a balanced life requires rest and refreshment. Now, I cannot read music. I can remember in music class at school when we were told to read a sheet of music that I faked it. Because I hadn't a clue really what I was looking at. And I just turned the page when the other students turned the page as well. But I understand, and I still can't read music,
understand that on a sheet of music, there is something that indicates a rest. Now, there is no music in a rest, but a rest is part of music. It's part of the piece. And in the same way, rest is part of the rhythm of life. Our bodies have a daily rhythm. Our bodies have a weekly rhythm. And that's where Sabbath is so special, so precious, so needed. And if we don't have times of adequate rest and refreshment, we are exposed to chronic tiredness, which will have mental and physical and spiritual implications. Elijah was suffering from what we would call burnout today. And the people who are at risk from burnout are people who are high achievers, people who are involved in professions or jobs that work with other people, that are involved in serving and helping others. A classic case of burnout is Moses. Moses was a great leader of men, an outstanding leader of men. He loved his people. He was used by God to lead the Israelites out of the promised land. He was used by God to establish the various offerings and rituals and ceremonies that we associate with the Old Testament. He gave various laws to govern the everyday lives of the people. He was a great man who loved his people. But turn with me to Exodus chapter 18. Exodus chapter 18, and beginning at verse 13. And there we have an insight into a day in the life of Moses. Exodus chapter 18 and verse 13. There we read these words. The next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people. And they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." Do you get the picture? Moses was spending all day from morning to evening listening to people and their problems. He was dealing with people's complaints and disputes and disagreements. And if he wasn't doing that every day, he was certainly doing that on a regular basis. Now, apparently, I understand that in the major department stores, there's a rotation of staff in the customer services department, because it's not actually good for people to be subjected to complaints day after day after day. It gets to people. And this is what Moses was subjected to on a regular basis. And his father-in-law expressed his concern. Verse 17. Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone." And his words were prophetic. Because turn with me to Numbers chapter 11. Numbers 11. Now, God had provided the children of Israel with manna, but they got tired of the manna, so they wanted some variety in their diet. And they brought their complaints to Moses. And notice Moses' reaction on this occasion. Numbers chapter 11 and verse 10. Moses heard the people of every family wailing at the entrance to their tent. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled. He asked the Lord, "Why have you brought this trouble on your servant? What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I give them birth? Why do you tell me to carry them in my arms as a nurse carries an infant to the land you promised an oath to their ancestors? Where can I get meat for all these people? They keep wailing to me, 'Give us meat to eat.' I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you're going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me, if I find favour in your eyes, and do not let me face my own ruin." That's a man experiencing burnout. That's a man who's tired. A man who's under pressure, and he can't take it anymore. And as I've said, the people who are most prone to that situation are high achievers, people whose professions involve working with others, helping and serving others. The Irish poet William Yeats once wrote, "Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart." In other words, if we keep giving and giving and giving, and we're not looking after ourselves, we're not being replenished, we're not being filled and refreshed, we will come to a stage like Elijah where we'll just want to give up. And so for those of us who are involved in those types of professions, who have that type of personality, we need to seek help and support from others. We need to build into our lives those times of respite and refreshment. And if you know someone in that situation, if you know someone who perhaps is on the edge of such a crisis, one of the most wonderful things that we can do is to provide support, to provide encouragement, to help a person in that situation. So Elijah, he failed to deal with the aftermath of success. He was physically tired. He was emotionally spent. And also, he suffered from a lack of perspective. The third factor. It's possible that Elijah had expected too much after the glorious victory in Mount Carmel. Perhaps he thought that the ending of the drought, the display of God's power in Mount Carmel, would bring Ahab and Jezebel to their senses and that they would realize that they were wrong. But of course it didn't. He was unprepared for Jezebel's violent reaction. And in his behavior, we see a lack of clarity and perspective on the part of Elijah. He should have thought about the source of the threat. Now, the source of the threat was one woman. Yes, Jezebel was a very formidable lady, for sure. But God took care of 450 prophets. He could take care of one woman. But Elijah didn't see that. Elijah thought he was alone, when in actual fact he was not alone. Elijah thought that he was a failure, when in actual fact he had won a glorious victory with the power of God. But Elijah saw only the problems. He forgot about all the blessings, and so he descended into the pit, into the trap of self-pity. And I don't know if you've ever been in the trap of self-pity. It's actually very nice to wallow about in it for a while. You know? Woe is me. No one understands. No one cares. But it's actually not a good place to be. It's actually a very bad place to be. And that's where Elijah was at this point in his ministry. So here we have Elijah, this giant of faith, this heroic figure, this mighty man of God, this spiritual giant laid low. And that obviously had tremendous consequences for God's work. Because Elijah fled from Israel, he failed to press home the advantage of the glorious victory that had been won at Mount Carmel. The fact that he ran away did damage to the work of God. But in response, we see God's tremendous goodness. We see tremendous compassion and kindness and generosity on the part of God. We see how God treats a quitter. Notice God's response. Turn back to 1 Kings 19. The first thing that we note is that God poured out his compassion on Elijah. He offered Elijah compassion. 1 Kings 19 and verses 5 and 6. Then he, that is Elijah, lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then lay down again. God provided exactly what Elijah needed. Elijah needed rest, he needed food, he needed space, and that's exactly what God gave him. God didn't preach a sermon. God didn't issue a rebuke. He didn't blame Elijah, he didn't shame Elijah. He showered tremendous compassion upon the prophet. And then, when Elijah reached the Mount of God, God asked him a question, a very tender question. The latter part of verse 9. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah shouldn't have been there. That wasn't part of God's plan for him. But God very tenderly, very sensibly says, "What are you doing here?" And Elijah said, "Oh, the people have forsaken the covenant. They've broken down the altars. They're persecuting your people." Now, Elijah didn't have the full picture, but God listened sensitively. And then he drew Elijah out of himself. The wind, the earthquake, the fire appeared. And God wasn't in any of those natural phenomena. And then God spoke through the still, small voice. He asked Elijah that same question, "What are you doing here?" Elijah repeated the answer. And then God said to him, "In actual fact, Elijah, you're not on your own. There are 7,000 who remain loyal to me." But you see how God poured compassion upon Elijah. Even though he had failed, even though he had lacked faith, even though he wasn't where he should be, God showered compassion on him. And that's the same God today. The same God who showered compassion on Elijah is willing to shower that same compassion upon each one of us. God also gave him a commission. He gave Elijah a fresh task. And we have the details of it in verses 15 to 18 of 1 Kings 19. Elijah was to anoint 2 kings and a prophet as his successor. In other words, God trusted Elijah again. Yes, Elijah had failed him, Elijah had let him down, but here is God trusting him again. And that's one of the great qualities of God. Even when we fail him, even when we let him down, he's willing to trust us again. You just imagine if Elijah had been employed by one of the great corporations here in Australia. The reaction would have been, "Oh, he's past it. He can't take the pressure anymore. He's gone past his use-by date." He would have either been sacked or persuaded to accept a redundancy package. But that's not the way that God treats people. God doesn't cast people in the scrap heap after they let him down, after they fail him. That's not the way that God treats people. And he's the God of the second chance. He's the God of the new start. He's the God of the fresh beginning. And if you've let down God, and we all have in some way or another, there's always a chance to start again. He's willing to trust us afresh, just like he did with Elijah. So he showered compassion on him, he gave him a commission, and then he gave him companionship. God gave Elijah a close personal friend, and that person was Elisha. You see, up until then, Elijah had been somewhat a lone ranger figure. But God gave Elijah Elisha. A younger man, a man with a different personality, but they were a good team. They worked well together. And there's a lesson there for all of us. We were made for community. We were made for friendship. We were not made to live life alone. A couple of weeks ago, there was a feature on the 60 Minutes Current Affairs programme about loneliness. And loneliness is spreading like an epidemic through the Western world. We have never been so good at communicating with each other. We've got all the devices, but people have never been so lonely. And that being the case, the church has a tremendous opportunity to minister to people who are lonely. The church is working best when people feel the support and help and encouragement of others. God gave Elijah a companion. And I pray that we can be a companion to someone, that we ourselves have friends in this community. That's how God helped Elijah along the road to recovery. And so in conclusion, Elijah was a man of like passions as we are. Yes, we can be inspired by his glorious victory over the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. But if anything, I am more blessed and challenged by this episode in Elijah's life. He faltered. He failed. He let God down. He wanted to give up. Therein lies a warning, but this is also a story of tremendous hope. It's a story of hope because God did not leave Elijah that way. It's a story of hope because God's grace triumphed over Elijah's despair. It's a story of hope because even though Elijah shouldn't have been there at the Mount of God, God went after him. It's a story of hope, and there's more. Remember, Elijah prayed that he might die. He wanted to die. How did Elijah end his earthly life? He never died. Elijah is one of only 2 people who has left this world without dying. What about that? What a God! God had a far better plan for Elijah. Isn't it a good job he didn't answer Elijah's prayer? Maybe it's a good job he doesn't answer some of our prayers. And so that's how God treats a quitter. That's how God treats someone who wants to give up. He offers his compassion, he trusts us again, and he provides support and encouragement. God is the God of the second chance, the new start, the fresh beginning. And I close with the words of this beautiful gospel song. When you feel that you just can't pray, you've grieved the Lord and he seems so far away, don't lose hope, for he wants to say, my child, just begin again. When you feel you can't try anymore, it seems you've failed so many times before, the Lord still loves you. He is the door for you to begin again. He wants to put his new life within, give you the power to overcome your sin. Right where you are, just talk to him, and you can begin again. You can begin again.
What a delicate, what a joy divine, on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, Jesus, safe and secure from all our love. Leaning, Jesus, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, Jesus, safe and secure from all our love. Leaning, Jesus, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a mighty dread, what a mighty fear, on the everlasting arms. I am blessed peace with my Lord to me, on the everlasting arms. Leaning, Jesus, safe and secure from all our loves. Leaning, Jesus, on the everlasting arms.
Invited to remain standing for the blessing. And now unto him who is able to keep you from falling, and to present you before his glorious presence without fault and with great joy. To the only God, our Saviour, be glory, majesty, power, and authority, through Jesus Christ our Lord, now and forevermore.